Welcome, my friends, to the latest edition of Here's What We Know, the podcast of unexpected conversations. And this may be one of the most unexpected conversations because you may not know this about me, or maybe you do. As a man who spent the majority of his life in the country music industry, you may not know that I have a classical love. I have a culture fetish. Some of you may have figured that out. I've had experts on about Van Gogh. I've had experts on Monet. I've had experts talk about how you can tie the modern day thriller to Shakespeare. But this one hits really close to home. I have a passion for classical music. And this guy, his name, he is the founder and director of the arts group, and his name is Robert Emery. And you're going to want to know him so much better after this conversation. Robert, how are you?
I am amazingly well, thank you, Gary. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited about this. When I had the opportunity to talk to you, they said, "You want to talk to Robert Emery?" And I'm like, yes, I do. You are one of the most interesting people. Your background, what you do, how you expand upon things. Because when we think of the world of classical music, we think stodgy. You know that as well as I do.
Yeah.
We think white-haired ladies, silver-haired ladies with the opera glasses and stuff. What I love about you is you bring fun and curiosity to the world of classical music.
Well, I try. I mean, the whole point of classical music is one day, many, many years ago now, it was what we have as pop music today or as country music today. And there were, drama. And if you think about all the drama to do with Taylor Swift and her latest boyfriend or not, back in the day, you had the exact same thing, but with all these amazing classical composers. But actually, they were a bit more nutty than a lot of the people around today. And some of the stories of these composers is just incredible. And all music starts with what we call classical music. And country music has its foundations in classical music, pop music, rock music. It all has its foundations in classical music. I work with Jim Steinman, who wrote Bat Out of Hell, amongst other things, and with Meatloaf. And he had a massive love of opera. And so you listen to things like Bat Out of Hell or Paradise by the Dashboard Light or those big tracks, I Do Anything for Love. And you realize actually they're all like mini operas. And they all have their foundation in classical music. So I'm a massive champion. But at the same time, I understand why everybody thinks it's so boring. And actually, that's our fault for doing such a bad job of marketing this amazing music.
Well, people think it's boring. People don't understand it until they hear a song that lights them up, right? And they know it, right? When you hear Grieg's "The Hall of the Mountain King," you know that song.
Yeah.
You know there's so much of it. You know, a lot of people know Beethoven. You know more Mozart than you think you do. And it's stuff that it's part of who we all are. You just don't know the stories behind it. And I'm telling you, he does, Robert, your series that you tied the things together, the classical conversations where you took little things and you showed a little bit behind the scenes. We do a thing here. We do one of the things here in San Jose is we bring songwriters out. And we do these shows where the songwriters tell the story behind the song. And that's what you do on the classical side. And plus because you're right, some of the most interesting people, and I would argue that the artists today are just as weird as they were back in the 1600s.
Yeah.
So it is so much fun. Now, first of all, when I said founder and director of the arts group, can you give me a little quick overview on that? Because that is a small sentence for a huge organization.
Yeah, sure. When I was younger, I was probably about the age of, 13 or 14, I realized really quickly that it'd be really difficult to earn a living becoming a pianist, which is what I was, or what I am, I suppose. But my trade was piano. Learning the piano is what I did since I was 7 years old. And I just thought, well, I need to do other stuff, other things that's going to make me money. I don't want to live a life struggling financially. So I decided to create a company which has different elements within the entertainment world. It all stems back to music. Everything links back to music. So I run an orchestra, a choir, a record production company, and everything we do, all of the different elements of this, they all stem back to making music whether it's live music or recorded music. And that was just a little baby I set up a long time ago now. But when I was young and frivolous and didn't have any cares in the world and was not scared to fail, it's amazing what you can do when you're a young kid and you have no prison bars of the world putting you in your cell, isn't it?
Well, that's the key to life, right? I mean, we tell people like in the country music industry, if you come up to me out here and say, "Hey, I want to get in the country music industry," and I'm like, "You got to move to Nashville. You're young, you have no kids, move to Nashville."
Yeah.
And you need to be in that mix. You need to be. I just talked to a songwriter yesterday who talked how they moved from Texas and they waited tables and they walked dogs of singers. That's what they did. That was their job. But they got into the mix and got exposed to it. And it is that courage, because you're right. You don't want to be courageous at my age, right? You want to be protective of your family, of everything else. But when you're 18, 22, 28, and you can go, yeah, I'm gonna head out because I have teenagers. And my son loves sports. And, he tried out for team, didn't make it. And he talked about how competitive it was. And my background's music. I'm an old French horn player.
Oh, really?
How about that? Yeah.
So my wife is a professional French horn player. We met at the Royal Albert Hall in London when I was conducting. And it's an awesome instrument.
It is, and people who listen to the show know I'm getting ready to humble brag. I made All-State 4 years in a row here in America. That's a big deal. But then I decided I didn't want to go into music because I knew how competitive it was, or I thought I did. And I went to a small college, and I wasn't majoring in music, but I thought I would play in the band and I would grace them with my presence. Because how good was I? And what a wonderful little treat was it going to be for them to have someone of my stature play in their And I got there and was blown away by the level of musicianship. And it occurred to me that this was not Juilliard. This was not Berkeley. This was Troy State University in Troy, Alabama. And these were the most amazing musicians I had ever heard in my life who could play better than me, not even using a mouthpiece. I mean, it was just beyond. And so I've explained to my son, listen, the thing about music, Tom Brady gets too old to play. Steph Curry will get too old to play. Ronaldo got too old to play. Messi will get too old to play. You can be an amazing musician when you're 78.
Yeah.
Your shelf life is a heck of a lot longer than an athlete's.
I hope so.
And well, you've seen it, right? How many times have you conducted an orchestra where you looked out and saw a seasoned group?
Yeah, every time. Without fail.
And so I just find it, because you started playing when you were like 7.
Yeah.
I think you're a fabulous pianist. I mean, fabulous. But when did you know, and I've asked this of athletes, when did you know you were better than a lot of people? Because you are. And there's that demarcation line. And I know you have to throw off the humble coat right now, but what age did you go, I'm not bad at this?
Well, there's it's a difficult thing to answer that, because there's always going to be people who are better than you, always. And the trick is to not care about that and to admire it and to say, well, maybe I can get to that status one day. And then even if you do get to that level one day, there'll always be somebody else who's better than you, always, in music. And so you just have to say, am I better than 95, 97, 98% of the rest? And if the answer is yes, then you can do a good job of it. There's something you can do with it. I think that's kind of the same across any creative industry, really, because there will always be somebody better than you. It's just life. And when I started playing at the age of 7, I had absolutely no idea that what I did was a bit unusual. So I used to listen to pop songs on the radio once a week. Over here in the UK, we had a program called Top of the Pops, and it was a great big live BBC One television event that happened on a Friday night, I think it was, and then you found out who was number one of the charts that week, and it was always a real big deal. And they had a live performance from who was number one. And I remember listening to some of these tracks, and then I just went to the family piano, which is like an old heirloom. It was my great grandmother's or something, and I just started playing the piece of music I just heard. And as a 7-year-old kid, you don't think about it. You don't think about that's a bit strange or a bit unusual. It's just something I did. And at some point, my parents went, okay, well, he clearly likes playing the piano. We should just get him some lessons. And I had lessons with a local teacher, like 4-minute walk down the road. And after about a year, she went, yeah, I can't help him anymore. He's past my teaching ability. You need to get him to a conservatoire, to a professional standard. And so that's sort of where I zoomed off. And at that point, the local conservatoire, the local sort of dedicated specialist music school, was accepting, I think it was 2 piano players in my year, and I was one of them. And that's from across the whole of the country. So at that point you go, okay, well, I think I might be quite good at this. And then when I was 17, I had to apply to go to the Royal College of Music, which is the same sort of level as the Juilliard or Curtis or somewhere like that. In fact, if you look at the league tables, you'll find that the Royal College of Music is technically better than the Juilliard, but nevertheless, that's me showing me showing my allegiance to the RCM, and I got in, and again, I think I was one out of 3 pianists from around the world. They did auditions around the world for the Royal College, and I was one out of 3. And again, you kind of go, okay, well, I must be good at this, but I'm not good enough, and that's, I think, the difference. Is what I realized is to become a professional classical piano player, the people who you see on TV, all they do is practice. All they do is sit in a room by themselves for 10 hours a day, practice. Their life is touring, doing one concert in one country, getting on a plane, doing another concert, learning, thousands of pages of music. And I just thought, God, that's a really boring, crappy life. And it's not a life I want to lead. But I love playing the piano, and I don't want to give that up. And I love theatre as well. So I thought, well, perhaps I can go into the world of theatre and musical directing and doing musicals and shows. And then I realized I love making albums. And so, variety is the spice of life. You do all of these different things. People ask me, how do I make my money? And I say, well, I've got about 25 different things of how I make money. I don't just go and, I don't know, build chairs for a living. And that's all I do all day. And so I think for me, that stops me from going utterly insane, because without that, I think I would go mad.
I loved everything about that answer. I did. And how you didn't let it, you have to just give away the concern and just enjoy what you do and go, here's how good I am. And it is. And the line, it's like Olympic athletes, right? I mean, the line between first place in the 100-meter dash and third place is literally hundreds of seconds.
Yeah.
Right. I've had a Olympic gold medalist swimmers on, and I talked to one, and he's like, I increased my time by, I shortened my time by almost a full second, and it made all the difference.
Yeah.
And you're going, wow.
Yeah.
That close.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Formula One. I don't know how big Formula One is over in the States. I think
Drive to Survive. Yes.
Netflix. Okay,
my
great.
wife and I are so hooked on that thing.
There you are. So there's only one Verstappen, isn't there?
Winning the Australian Grand Prix.
Yeah, but there's only one Verstappen, and who's the world champion. I can't remember 4 years in a row or something. And he's now about to be, if he does it this year, I think he'll be the most successful F1 driver in the world. Now, the F1 drivers, they are the 20 top drivers in the world at motor racing. And so they're already up there. But the difference between number 1 and number 20 is something like 700th of a second. It's insane how close it is. But there is always going to be just the one person who is at the top. And if all the other 19 drivers went, I'm no good, I may as well give up because I'm not that number 1. Well, you wouldn't have competition. You wouldn't have a race. So you've always got to recognize we can't all be the Verstappens of this world. Most of us can't even be in the top 20 in this world. You just have to find do you know what? You have to find your X factor. That's exactly why that program is called X Factor, that everybody has something special about them. You just have to find out what it is and tap into it. And that's easier said than done. For me, I was really lucky because I was just like, I do music. I found that. I have 2 boys and a baby girl who's now 4 months old. My 2 boys, I don't know what their X Factor is yet. I haven't found it. They haven't found it. They will do one day. But it's not coming to them as easy as it came to me. So I know how super lucky I am with that. But I think we all have an X Factor.
It's an excellent point. And because I've had such a background in country music, I can remember sitting with someone who's a huge star now, iconic star, right? And I can remember sitting with him when he was nobody in an office at the radio station I worked at, and having the conversation with him and one of the other people, and he was going, if I could just figure out how to get to that next level. And of course, I looked at him and said, if I could figure that out, I'd be sitting on a private island talking to a better artist than you, bigger artist than you.
Yeah.
And now, but he did. He figured out what his voice was. And you're right. Anything in the entertainment. I grew up a fan of one radio guy, right? His name was Larry Lujak. But I realized I would never be as good as Larry Lujak because Larry Lujak was there, right? And once I figured out what it is I bring, and I don't worry about anybody else who's better than me.
Yeah.
And I don't have this competition where I hope they fail. I don't. I just do this. And the fun of it, and if you can figure out how to enjoy what's going on. Like I said, do you want to talk to Robert Emery? Yes, I do, because he's fascinating. And I do love your approach to it. And as I said before, that whole thing. Now, you and I are alike in so many ways. It's amazing we're not related.
Similar accent.
Similar accents. And look, and you're in Britain and I'm here, and I'm sure you've watched an episode of Doctor Who. Me too. So we're just twins. But my little musical journey, I got to be drum major in the marching band. So I got to conduct. But you are a conductor of symphonies. You've worked with everybody. You've done the Royal Philharmonic Hall. You've been at the Sydney Opera House. You've done stuff that is just, I've said this before. When you meet a general, it's rare. It's very hard to meet a president or a prime minister, but generals are very rare. And when you meet one, it's like, wow, that's a general? The world of conducting is the same thing. When you meet a conductor, they are a small fraternity. And I'm talking about that upper level. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was, A, how you got there, and B, as somebody who can lead 4/4 time and 3/4 time and all the other stuff, it is nothing like conducting. And I would love for you to explain to me what it is the conductor does.
Okay, fine. Well, first of all, how did I get there? Picking up a stick and waving it in front of 90 professional musicians is a scary thing. You've got 90 eyeballs looking at you, 180 eyeballs looking at you, and they're probably grumpy. They probably don't want to be there, and they're probably looking at you going, he's young, he's inexperienced, he's bound to be rubbish. Why is he standing up there telling me how to do my job? And that's what I have to do on a daily basis. And I started when I was 16. And it's a fascinating, simple story. I got a place at the Royal College of Music in London. I mentioned it earlier on. I needed money to go there. I didn't have money. My parents didn't have money. And I thought, God, I need to earn a lot of money here. I'm not going to go and work in a McDonald's, and not because there's anything wrong with that, but because I want to use my skill to earn money. So,
stay in your world.
Yeah. So I phoned up the Birmingham Philharmonic Orchestra, and as a 16-year-old boy, and I went, can I hire you to come and do a week-long series of concerts? And they went, yeah, who's going to conduct us? And I said, well, I am. And then I phoned up the venue and I said, can I hire the venue to do a week-long series of concerts with the Birmingham Philharmonic Orchestra? And they went, yeah, sure. And then I went back to the orchestra and said, I forgot to mention this. I don't have any money to pay you, so can you do it for free? And they went, yeah, right. And then I phoned up the venue and I said, I forgot to mention this, but the orchestra are doing it for free because I don't have any money. So can you give me the venue for free? And they went, yeah, right. And I'd never, ever had a conducting lesson. I didn't know anything about conducting. I went on YouTube and I watched people conduct the pieces of music that I was going to play. And it was all kind of pop classics of things like Mars from the Planets and In the Hall of the Mountain Kings by Grieg and that sort of stuff, Carmina Burana. And I just faked it. I just stood as a 16-year-old in front of that orchestra going, how hard can it be to wave a stick and get it vaguely right and hope that they're going to be okay? And as a cocky little shit, as a 16-year-old kid, that's exactly what I did. And I stood up on that podium, did it. And because I was young, I got away with it. And I earned enough money in that week of concerts. We sold out. We did lots of press and radio for it. We sold out. So I earned enough money to make me last 3 years at the Royal College of Music. And that's how I grabbed my money.
No. You got to stop right here. Okay. I'm having a hard time just putting everything in my head what you just said. So let's recap. 16-year-old calls up an orchestra and said, can I hire you for no money? And they said, sure. And then the venue said, sure.
Yep.
There's way more to this, Robert, than you are telling me. This is something. How did you get the orchestra to go? And you said, by the way, I'm going to conduct it. And I'm 16 years old. I need to know that story. And I appreciate you giving me the 30,000 foot view, but now we need to drop the parachute right into it. How did that happen?
How did what happen? I just called them.
How did you talk them into going, okay, we're going to go play this venue for no money and let a 16-year-old do the conducting?
I have no idea. I just called them and I just said, well, can I have a meeting and pitch them the idea? And they went, yeah, we love that. Yeah, we're in. We'll do it. I don't know.
I've ever heard. That is the craziest music. And I've been doing the music industry a long time. That right there is my number one crazy story. I've been doing this for decades and decades and decades. That is the craziest story I've ever heard in my entire life.
So look, one of the problems with becoming an adult is that we put ourselves in boxes. I mentioned it earlier on, these invisible prison bars, which, the older we get, the more responsibility we have, the more fearful we are. We get a mortgage. We've got to pay our bills. We've got to look after the kids. Where do we put the food on the table? And the older we get, the more pressure we get. And it's that curvature of life. And then when you get really old and you're towards the end of your years, and then hopefully you've gotten over that stress of I need to now look after and pay the bills because they're all paid, and then you start becoming a kid again, essentially, and because you have less responsibilities when you get into your elderly years, and then you literally revert back to your kid. So as a child, if you've got great parents who bring you up with love and support and confidence, and there's a fine line between confident and being cocky. And I was like really on the edge of that line. Sometimes I went too far. And I can recognize that now, but there is a fine line. And I think if you're a confident child who can speak to adults well and converse with them well, I think you can get away with pretty much almost anything, because the adults just think, oh, isn't that cute? It's amazing. And then at some point you grow up and then that whole ability, that whole thing just disappears and you go, what happened there? And then life suddenly becomes a lot harder because you have to try and fight for the things you need. But as a kid, you don't.
So you're telling me as I'm rapidly approaching the age where I should call up my local symphony and ask to conduct it, is what you're saying?
Well, give it another 20. Look, I tell you, If an 80-year-old man or woman who's a bit frail, a bit elderly, calls up their local symphony orchestra and says, one of the last things I want to do on this earth is come and conduct an orchestra. That orchestra are going to find it really hard to turn around and go, no. And it's the same with a 16-year-old kid. But a 40-year-old guy who's, in the so-called prime of his life, earning the money he needs to earn, who calls up that orchestra, and they're going to be like, well, no, you need to pay for it. Go out and find the money from somewhere. So you've got these magical things at the bookends of life. And then the middle bit is just really bloody hard.
You are just the most fascinating person you are. I am just. I was already a fan. I'm becoming a bigger fan, and we'll have the link to his website and everything, because you need to deep dive on Robert, because you're going to just find him. I know if you've listened to this podcast right now, you're already going, wow, this guy. Wait till you deep dive on it and start seeing all the other stuff and some of the interviews, because he's got podcasts, he's got video shows, he's got YouTube channel, all of this stuff. Now, when it comes to conducting, and I'll ask this question, because as I said, when you're up in front of a drum corps and you're directing, you're trying to give a beat, you're trying to give them the upbeat, the downbeat, and all this stuff. And it's very regimented. But when I see a conductor, it's grand movements that have I shouldn't say no connection to the beat, but it's just a loosely held idea. Right? Because it's, and again,
it
if you're
depends
watching the video, you're seeing me do this. But
it depends who the conductor is, and it depends what the piece of music is. But you're right. Sometimes the conductor seems like he's having some sort of epileptic fit on stage, and somehow the musicians are making the music that they need to do. You're right. So your question is, what does a conductor actually do? Yeah.
Yeah, and go through all of it, because I also know when we see a performance, is what we talked earlier. You think the guy is just walking in and waving his arms. You have been working with that orchestra before you ever stand on the podium and grab the baton.
Yeah. So on a basic level, what does a painter do? A painter buys a piece of paper or a canvas, buys some paints and a paintbrush, and puts that paint onto said canvas or piece of paper, and ta-da, we've got a work of art. You could just do a great big X of black and nothing else and call it art and say, well, it means a lot because that's my statement of life, that I don't like the government that's in at the moment, and this is my great big cross saying no. And then, if you're famous and you're, I don't know, a Damien Hirst or somebody, or a Banksy, you can sell it for £500,000 and everybody goes, oh God, it's genius. So conducting, the X, the buying the paintbrush, buying the paint is the equivalent of me standing there conducting a beat, whether it's 4/4, 3/4, and telling all the players the speed, the tempo I want them to play at. That's the foundation level. That's the base level. All conductors have to do that to some extent. If you've got 90 people sitting there, how do they know when to start playing? In terms of, let's say they all need to play on the first second, on bar one, beat one, they all need to play chord. Let's think Beethoven's Fifth, the most famous piece of music in the world. Ba, 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 ba. How do they all know how to start that very first beat? Well, it's simple. They have to watch one individual person who is in control of that. And that one person says, you're going to start playing now. So that is a fundamental, basic element of what the conductor does. But art is subjective. You might love the X on that piece of paper. You might think it is the most powerful statement anybody has ever made in art. You might also think it's the biggest pile of shite and a 2-year-old could do it. It's subjective. And music is the same thing. It's subjective. What I love, you might hate, and vice versa. And so there has to be somebody who chooses how the orchestra sound, how the orchestra play, whether they play with venom, whether they're angry, whether they're calm, whether they're excited, whether they're quiet, loud, whether they're fast or slow, whether you go ba 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 very quick and you join the two phrases up very closely together, or whether you go ba 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 off and wait and get some tension in the room and then go ba 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 and off. There's no right or wrong to this. Beethoven doesn't instruct everybody, you must wait 3.5 seconds in between those two phrases. There's nothing in the music which tells you that's your interpretation. But you can't have 90 people interpreting something. It doesn't work. You have to have one person dictating something for it to make sense, which is why playing in an orchestra is very much a dictatorship. The important thing to know, though, is as that dictator, you have to give your power to the players. That's the difference. You use the power when you need it, but apart from that, you have to give the power to the players so they can make the beautiful music. Because at the end of the day, all I'm doing is waving a stick. I don't make a single sound. And so I have to make sure that the people who are making the sound feel confident and happy that they are able to do what they feel is right. And if at the end of the day, I don't like it, I have the right to turn around and go, yeah, that doesn't work for me. I have to find another way to help you play that, because that's not how I feel the music should be played. And sometimes that is where you get anger between a conductor and an orchestra, because what the player feels is right is not necessarily what the conductor feels is right. And then you have these two opposing arguments. Who is right? Well, at the end of the day, I go back to the same thing. It's a dictatorship. It has to be the conductor who chooses what is right, because that's what they feel is right. And that's my job, is essentially fighting with people and trying to persuade them that I think I know what I'm doing and we're going to do it my way because it's the only way that I feel is right. And you might not like it, but that's kind of tough. That's where I'm doing this job and you're doing that job. And at the end of the day, I hope that we can somehow achieve something which we all love at the end of it. And that's what being a conductor is.
I think I had that same conversation with my sons last night.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. It's the interpretation of that. And that's always been my thing is I try to explain, and I was trying to explain to my children that the conductor, you're just seeing the tail end. What you're seeing is the interpretation that these professionals have worked together. And it is the emotional, the conductor. I love watching the conductor because you can sense the emotion, and all music is emotion to me. You can sense the emotion that they are trying to convey, right? I mean, one of my favorite pieces is Rhapsody in Blue, right? And I love when it's da 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 da, and it just kind of fades and just kind of stops for a second. And the conductor stands there, and then he raises, and they go, ba-da-da-da-da, ba-bum-bum-ba-dum-bum-bum-ba-dum-bum, but and the conductor will just, and you just feel it.
At Reed Animal Hospital, they treat your pet as if it was their own. Now, I'm a very satisfied customer. I can tell you they mean that. It's not a chain. It truly is about helping you and your pet enjoy life together. Dr. David Reed and his entire staff take the time to get to know you and your pet. I can tell you what I like. He's helped me better understand what my dog Luna needs and how I can take care of her more efficiently and kindly. Find them online at reedanimalhospital.com. 2 locations, Saratoga and Campbell. Little secret from me to you, Dr. Reed actually gives you his cell number so he can answer your questions and concerns. They really are committed to you and your pet. reedanimalhospital.com.
If you love Rhapsody in Blue, Gary, there's a great YouTube video. If you Google Rhapsody in Blue, Robert Emery, you will find a video which we cut together. And it's me I can't remember, as a 13-year-old, I think 12 or 13-year-old kid playing the Rhapsody in Blue. And then we also recorded it when I performed it with Symphony Orchestra Basel in Switzerland about, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. And we recorded that. And we cut the two together. So you've got like a 12-year-old Robert and a 30-something-year-old Robert playing the same piece. But the one as me as an adult, I'm also conducting as well as playing the piano. And we put them two on top and we flip between them both. And it's great fun to watch. So if you love the Gershwin, then, watch that.
Great. Now there's
Like
another few hours of my life gone because I will go down that rabbit hole and I will say that I love that piece. I have always loved that piece. I've always been a fan of Gershwin, but I love that piece. And if I could play one piece of music on the piano, and I can't, let's be clear, but if I could play one piece of music on the piano, it would be the Rhapsody in Blue.
But Gershwin, he doesn't, or he didn't know how to write music. In terms of he couldn't read a musical score. He was a real jazzer. He knew how to compose. He could play piano phenomenally well. He died when he was very young, 34.
Brain cancer, I think.
Yes, brain cancer. Yeah. But he didn't know how to read music, so therefore he couldn't write it. So he used to play stuff on the piano, and he would have a colleague sit there physically writing it out. So the musicians would know what to play because he couldn't do that, and he didn't orchestrate.
Isn't it amazing and we only had him for just such a brief amount of time.
I know.
And to me, his genius was stunning. Like I said, if I would probably have 30 to 40 children if I could play Rhapsody in Blue, because I would just go into every hotel, very, very fine hotel that always has a grand piano, and I would sit down and start playing, and women would throw their clothes.
Damn it, I never tried that. That's what I need to do. Thank you. I know where I'm going tonight.
If you want the fourth child.
Yeah. No, I don't. I'm okay. Thank you. 3 is more expensive enough.
Just sit back and throw some Rhapsody in Blue at her, and it's on like Donkey Kong, is all I'm saying. But and that's always been, because it's just such an amazing, and it's got the movement, it's got the slow, it's got the that. And the way it ends, I just love it. And then you throw American in Paris. And
Summertime as well, Porgy and Bess is amazing.
Yeah, how do you hear bum, 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 bum? How do you hear that? Where does that come from in your head? And I ask that of songwriters all the time. But with music, it's even different because, and I know he didn't read the music, the composition, the 19,000 things that has to happen, the ability to know math, and you need to know math, is astounding to me. That is where you can see I kind of geek out on classical music. It's where it just overwhelms me.
So the thing about classical music is, I think we've got a perception issue. When you mention the word classical music, it scares people. Yeah. But if you say symphonic music, it's not so scary. And we all love symphonic music, because who hasn't seen Star Wars and loved the score from John Williams, or E.T. and has that amazing moment where E.T. flies and he's got the silhouette of the moon and you've got the ba-da-da-da-da in the background. Who hasn't seen that film, or Superman, or Indiana Jones, or you can go over to Hans Zimmer and Pirates of the Caribbean, who hasn't seen these amazing films and heard these amazing soundtracks. And the soundtrack, the music, is what takes you into that world. It's not the imagery; it's the music behind it, and all of that music is created by an orchestra. It's all created by an orchestra who have at some point had to learn Beethoven or Stravinsky or Gershwin. So it all stems from the same place. John Williams studied at the Juilliard in America as a classical pianist. That's his beginnings. Without his training as a classical musician, you wouldn't have the theme from E.T. or the Olympic jump
walking into
exactly. So it's really important, because a lot of people go, well, I don't like classical music. But if you put on the soundtrack from a John Williams score, they'll go, oh, God, I love that. And they don't realize how so similar. Like the Darth Vader, the bum, bum, that is so unbelievably similar to Gustav Holst's Planets, Mars.
Mhm.
I mean, unbelievably similar. I think John Williams must have heard Mars the night before or something and had it in his head because
Homage, if you will.
it's yeah, not half. And I don't blame him because it works unbelievably well.
Yeah.
And there's only so many notes in the scale. So, at some point there is going to be similarities between musical compositions. So that doesn't bother me in the slightest. My point is, you'll listen to that and you love it. You could go and listen to the Mars from the planets, and I guarantee you'll love it. So, anybody who's listened to this, if you like country music, if you like any music, just go and put on Mars from the Planets by Holst, and you'll suddenly go, I think I quite like this classical music stuff. That's the one thing I ask.
There's so much, and again, it's like when we touched on earlier, is that you like a lot of music. I'm talking to you listening. You like a lot of music that you, and you might hear the word classical, and you're right, and you have that pejorative in your mind that it's not. It's stuff that you love. You cannot have, if you're my generation, there's no way you did not love the Bugs Bunny cartoons, and they were saturated with classical music, and maybe that was because there was no royalty rights. I'm not sure,
And the
but
same
still,
with Tom and Jerry.
yeah, it's so added to it. And then when you start listening to these, as on the classical connections, when you start getting the behind the scenes stories. I mean, we've heard Beethoven was going deaf, but he was a peculiar character before that ever happened.
Yeah.
And Mozart, you can watch the movie Mozart, and I think a lot of people have not seen it. He was the pop star of his day, and he was just as crazy as anything Keith Moon of The Who ever did. Mozart was doing it long before he ever did it.
Oh yeah, and Franz Liszt. Franz Liszt was a real heartthrob, a real pop star of his day. He was the first person to do a classical piano concert as a solo concert. Before then, it was a chamber instrument, only to be used with a group of people. And he went, "No, I like the piano. I think we could just do a concert of just me playing the piano." And so he was the biggest star in the world in his day. And he used to have long flowing hair, really attractive man when he was younger. And he got fed up of people trying to grab locks of his hair and literally put it in a little piece of jewelry, a little locket, and say that they were carrying around Liszt's hair. And so in the end, he got a dog and he shaved the dog and he gave the hair away from the dog. And he said it was his own. It's crazy. But I love these stories.
Well, and that's it. You could just go down rabbit holes. I listen, at some point when you have time, I do want to do another episode with you where we just go down and talk about the weirdest stories, because you know them. I can tell you weird stories from my part side of the music, but I love yours because, again, I don't know them. I know some of them because I've always been fascinated by the history of it. And I do. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, who are your favorite composers? I mean, because
that is really, really difficult.
that's why I didn't say composer.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
No, I get it.
I gave you that all. I gave you that out.
I think if I had to choose one, it would be Rachmaninoff. I have a real special kinship with his music. I always have done from being a young child, and something in his music just speaks to me. I don't know why, but it does. But then again, my sort of motto as a professional musician is my favorite piece of music or my favorite composer. My favorite composer has to be the person who I'm working on at the time. So if I'm learning a piece of Beethoven, I always say that's my favorite piece. And I force myself to go, I love this piece of music. It's the best piece of music I've ever heard in my entire life. And that for me works really, really well.
Well, and one of the things we'll do on the next episode, because I'm so trying to pull you back into this, one of the things I would love to do is to just give you a list of all the composers, because you have such a history with them. And you could tell me what you find most fascinating about them, or a little thing that I may not have known, or what it is about their music. I had a chance to sit with a I'm not going to name drop, but a world famous painter one time. And we went through an art gallery. And the best thing was he would tell me, he goes, every painting has a theme. And he would show me the themes that as a layperson, I never saw.
Yeah.
I would never see it. But he would go, an example, theme of this is white. And I'm like, what? And he goes, I want you to notice how many different shades of white you see in this painting. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, wow. And I would love to do that with you also,
Okay.
because I think that would be, okay, this is just for my own gratification, honestly.
No worries. Bring it on.
and that would be just such fun. Your podcast is brilliant. I love the episodes. Because I've dove on the fun you had with Stuart Copeland of The Police is fun. And I enjoyed how somebody like that, he was different with you than he would be with me, because he's so, and not that he has anything wrong with me, but he so respects your talent that it gives you an entry point that's different than I would have with him. I can come at him as a fan and go, oh man, that drum part on every little thing she does is magic. That was amazing. Then he'll go, yeah, thanks. You come at it as a peer. And even in some case, a peer who's better at more things in the world of music than he is. Even though Stuart Copeland's a composer, I respect the heck out of that. It was fascinating what I thought you were able to get him to talk about that I don't know if most interviewers would.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, I love him to bits. It's a great episode.
And Sarah Miles, the actress.
Yes. Sarah's unusual, isn't she? She's great.
Dude. And I was so impressed on how you handled the controversy.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't
tricky.
love controversy, let me just tell you, The Man Who Loved Cat Dancing, Burt Reynolds, Sarah Miles, somebody died on set. And it's a story. You can, David Whiting, you look him up, and I was sitting there going, he is not going to ask her about that. And then you kept, very respectfully, kept trying to rotate the picture so she could comment on every, because she's like, well, I can't really talk about that. Okay, well, can we talk about this? I was so impressed by that. I'm like, man, this guy's probably better at my job than I would be at his.
Yeah, Sarah's lovely. She's truly batty, but in the most adorable way. I love her to bits. She's great. And again, a really bright, intelligent woman, who's led an incredible life. And the story she mentions in that podcast episode is just shocking.
It is. And you guys can, I'm not going to spoil it for you because I don't think it's spoilers, but when you're listening to it, I want you to remind yourself that Robert is a conductor and a musician, right? He's not an investigative journalist, but he was awesome. I was sitting there going, wow, that guy has stones for days. That guy does. So I'm like, there's no way. I'd have been like, okay, you don't want to talk about it? Okay. I won't talk about it. Yeah. But can we talk about this? Okay. And the billionaire guy who wants to live forever?
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yes, he was tricky.
I've talked to very rich people, but I've never talked to billionaires. I've stood behind one in line because I'm in Silicon Valley, right? That's where I live. And I remember I was telling somebody the other day who works for Google, and I'm like, I stood behind the founder of Google at a fast food Mexican restaurant one time. And I'm like, hey, are you Sergey? And he goes, hey. I said, yeah. And I'm like, good to meet you. Enjoy your product. Have a fun burrito.
Yeah.
But I didn't get in a conversation.
I meet lots of billionaires in my line of work. I mean, real billionaires, not just people who have got a bit of money, but real billionaires. And they are, they live very, very unusual lives. until you get exposed to seeing how they actually live. You can't imagine it.
Did you see this
It's
study where they said that billionaires tend to have psychopathic tendencies? And you know why? Let me share this with you. If you were to give me, hey Gary, do this episode and we'll give you $15 million, you would never see me again. I'd be like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to go travel with my family and this is what I'm going to go do. A billionaire goes, I've made 15. I wonder if I could turn this into 40.
Hmm.
I wonder if I can risk this and turn it to 180. I wonder if I can risk this and turn it into $1 billion. And most of us are not built that way. And you have to have a touch of psychopathy to go, yeah, I'm just going to risk it all. Which makes them.
I once mistook a billionaire who I was doing an event for a well, essentially like a bellboy, a luggage boy, and I gave him my bags to carry for me, and I didn't know he was the billionaire of the event until about an hour later when I got introduced to him, and he very politely gave me my bags and said, "I believe these are yours, sir."
What did you do? What did you do?
I just burst out laughing. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that was you. I'm sorry. Thank you for carrying my bags. I bet it's been a while since you did that for somebody. Yeah, I get lots of funny things happen to me like this.
It's going to be part of the promo package for this episode. Tom mistook a billionaire for a bellboy.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
What are you working on currently?
I'm writing a musical about a guy called Mesmer who lived in Austria in the 1700s. He was like, he's the person who discovered the subconscious. So that's where we get the English word mesmerized from Franz Anton Mesmer. So I'm writing a musical about him. And we've got the educational website, Ted's List, that I run as well. That was my COVID project that kind of took off and went crazy when I couldn't work. So I decided to create a music education website for anybody who wants to play any instrument. They can go on to teds-list.com and read all about the instrument and get helpful tips, tutorials, and advice. So that is being run at the same time. And there's quite a few other bits and bobs in the background as well. But those are the major things that are happening.
That's what you get when you ask Robert Emery what's going on. What are you working on? You know, you ask me what I'm working on, and I've got, I got to talk to the Golden Bachelor here in an hour or two. You know, and that's it. That's it. And you ask Robert, I'm like, well, I got to do this. I got to write this musical. I'm doing this thing. I'm composing this, and then you throw out this. I'm writing this musical. Like I would say, I'm composing 2 paragraphs on the story you told me about Liszt's hair, right? And no, you might as well say I'm writing a 700-page novel is what I'm writing, right? I mean, it's comparable, you know, and no author, if you were set back going, oh, what are you trying to do? Well, I'm working on a 1,000-page novel. You would go, that's the way I felt when you said, I'm working on some musicals and composing that. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? When does your wife and children see you? Tuesdays at 3?
If they're lucky.
That is right. Well, we're gonna go down those stories too, and I'm not going to keep you because I promised you I'd get you in and out of here in an hour. But because I know you have a lot, but I would love to have you back. I think you can tell I'm a fan and we'll continue. You'll find all the websites. We'll do the Ted's List. We'll have all this stuff listed on the bottom of the episode and check it out. It's Robert Emery. Maestro, you were wonderful.
Bless you. Thank you so much. I would love to come back for part 2. I can tell you more dirty stories.